Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Change Now 2021. It is amazing to be here, not quite the same as walking onto the stage at the Grand Palais as we did last year, but incredible congratulations to Santiago and all the team at Change Now for putting this incredible three-day event on. My name is James Bidwell. I am the chair of two B corporations, Springwise, the Global Innovation Intelligence Platform, and Reset, the sustainability and innovation consultancy for next generation businesses based in London. Today, I am joining you from the small island of Jersey. Jersey is 14 miles from the French coast, and I'm looking out on the ocean and beautiful nature, which feels like a great place to be talking to you from. We have a packed session for the next 1 hour and with some incredible panelists, and I think we will be in for a quite fantastic discussion. Our topic today is One Health. It is probably the most relevant topic of the whole conference. Of course it would be. And what we're going to be trying to explore is the interconnectivity of human, animal, and ecosystem environmental health. So how do they connect, and what can we learn from the last couple of years or 18 months of this COVID pandemic, and what can we do going forward? Joining me are some fantastic experts in this field, and we have split this session into three sections. The first section is going to be a pre-recorded video, which I'm going to be playing to you in a couple of minutes, and then we go into two panels. The panels will be 20-25 minutes long, and we will be exploring this One Health topic throughout those panels. So the thing I would like to try to get out of this is, how do we take action? And I've asked all our panelists to think about, what can we do going forward to change this world now? So my first speaker is a remarkable young man. He's only 23 years old. And in 2007, so I think he was 9 then, he developed the idea that children could promote climate justice by planting 1 million trees in every country in the world. And he thus launched the youth initiative, Plant for the Planet. So far, since 2007, 91,000 young people in 75 countries have been trained in Plant for the Planet academies, and they are empowered to speak out and fight for the future. In 2018, Felix Finkbeiner received the Federal Cross of Merit to honor his commitment for climate justice, and he's currently a PhD student of environmental sciences at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich. He is an amazing guy. He can't be live with us because he doesn't have Wi-Fi, because he's actually in Mexico, where he's living in a tent, sleeping in a hammock, and on one of the planting sites. An incredible young man. I'm now going to introduce you to Felix Finkbeiner.
Thank you, James, for that wonderful introduction. I'd love to be with you guys at Change Now right now, but unfortunately the planting season is about to begin here on the Yucatan Peninsula, and a lot still has to be prepared, so that's why I really have to be here in the field in southern Mexico. But I'm so glad we're addressing the global climate crisis as part of global health, or of health in general. Because in the long run, the climate crisis is going to be one of the biggest threats to global health. Decades ago, the young climate movement mostly discussed climate change as a threat to plants and animals, to our ecosystems, but we're increasingly understanding how big of a threat it is to human health and to humans more broadly. And in addressing the climate crisis, we've had a string of good news recently. Just now, the German Constitutional Court announced that the German climate policy is far from ambitious enough, and this is forcing the German government to introduce a new climate policy within the next year. And the German leading parties are stumbling over themselves about who is most ambitious in addressing the climate crisis now following this court judgment. So that's great. Similarly, in the US, President Biden has introduced his infrastructure bill, which, if passed, would be the most ambitious climate legislation introduced by any government ever. So we can really hope that Nancy Pelosi manages to pass it by July 4th. So that is a fantastic potential right there. And thirdly, the downward trend in the costs of battery and solar panels is continuing at an incredibly rapid rate. Solar panels and batteries are both now about 95% cheaper than they were about 20 years ago. This has been a rapid decrease in price, much faster than anyone would have predicted, and it means that addressing the climate crisis is a lot cheaper now than we had feared a while ago, and therefore also a lot easier. So all of that is reason for hope, but at the same time, there are also quite a lot of reasons to be pessimistic. Chief among them is that every year we're still emitting more greenhouse gases than in the years before. In fact, it's only economic crises so far that have actually led to temporary decreases in CO2 emissions, like in 2008 or just now as part of the pandemic. But so far, whenever these economic crises end, carbon emissions jump back up and continue to rise. In fact, it's been now about 30 years since we as humanity woke up to the seriousness of the climate crisis. But instead of reducing our emissions since then, in those past 30 years alone, we've actually produced more greenhouse gas emissions than in entire human history before that. So we're still very much on a trajectory making this crisis worse. And to have any chance to prevent catastrophic climate change, we have to act dramatically and immediately to, one, most importantly, reduce global carbon emissions to 0 by 2050. And on top of reducing carbon emissions, we also have to work with nature to capture as much carbon as possible in our ecosystems. That means protecting and restoring wetlands, peatlands. That means protecting the world's forests. And it also means restoring all of the forests we've lost so far. Earth used to have about 6 trillion trees. But of course, we humans have been cutting down lots of them over the past thousands of years, and particularly the past few hundred years. Which means that of these 6 trillion trees that once existed, only about half, about 3 trillion trees, still remain on Earth today. Now, in a perfect world, we would obviously restore all of these lost trees to someday live on a planet again with 6 trillion trees. But of course, we need a lot of space globally for agriculture, for settlements, and so on. So it's not possible to restore all of these lost trees. But according to a great study by our colleagues at ETH Zurich, published 2 years ago, we could restore about 1 trillion trees globally without competing with agriculture, settlements, and so on. And so we can't go from 3 trillion to 6 trillion, but maybe from 3 trillion to 4 trillion trees. And if we manage to restore all of these forests, they could capture about 1/4 of human-made carbon emissions every year. So that wouldn't solve the climate crisis, but would be an additional, incredibly valuable and necessary buffer that actually makes it possible to prevent catastrophic climate change. So we have to all come together and restore these 1 trillion trees globally. And we at Plan for the Planet are obviously trying our best to contribute. We initially started as a children and youth organization about 14 years ago. And that's still at the core of what we do at Plan for the Planet. We mobilize children and youth all around the world to become climate justice ambassadors. So they go out and convince others to take the climate crisis more seriously. As part of this, we've organized over 1,500 workshops in 75 countries in which we've educated over 90,000 kids to become such climate justice ambassadors, to spread the message, to plant trees in their communities, to speak to their mayors and other political leaders to get them to take the climate crisis more seriously. That's the one thing we do, but of course that's just not enough. We also have to get directly into the matter and address the challenge directly. So as part of this, we are doing our best to restore ecosystems directly, which is what we're doing here on the Yucatan Peninsula in southern Mexico. We're here as part of a large set of reserves, of which lots of area has been degraded in recent decades. So we are trying to restore these degraded areas by planting trees that allow restoration organizations to publicize their work, show their work, and make their work as transparent as possible and get people to support us. You can check it all out at plantfortheplanet.org or pp.eco. And you will see over 160 participating restoration projects all around the world. And you can find detailed information about each one of them. And if you love one, if you want to support one, you can easily see for each project what it costs them to plant one tree, usually somewhere around €1, and then donate directly to these projects. And what's incredibly important is that we at Plant for the Planet don't take any cut of that money, but 100% of that money goes directly to these tree planting projects, and it's entirely free for them to participate in this platform, of course. And to increase transparency even further, we're adding tools using satellite imagery to see how these areas are slowly transforming after being planted from brown to green. So a beta version of that is already available on the platform. And we've created a tree mapper app that allows projects to easily monitor their impact of their work, monitor the trees they're planting, how they're developing over time. So you now don't need an expert monitoring crew to measure the impact of a restoration project, but anyone can do it with this simple tree mapper app, and all the data immediately becomes transparent through our platform so that donors can see when these trees are planted and how they're developing, and scientists can use that data from these restoration organizations to measure the impact globally of restoration. So hopefully that's going to continue to be valuable. Just a few weeks ago, we partnered with a TV program in Germany that then managed to fundraise 1.5 million trees with this platform in just about a week. So this is what we are trying to contribute towards this goal of 1 trillion trees to restore global ecosystems to address the climate crisis. We have all the solutions, all the technologies we need to address the climate crisis, but we have to address it incredibly soon. Otherwise, it will cause a massive, major damage and danger to global health. So lots remains to be done, and I hope you'll join us in fighting this climate crisis. Stop talking, start planting.
Wow, Felix, thank you so much. I can hear the audience applause. What a fantastic opening talk. Many things to unpick, but briefly, the power of the next generation and the power of leadership is quite extraordinary. And Felix standing in front of that most beautiful tree in the middle of nature, walking the talk and doing, I think, what we all here at ChangeNOW are thinking about. He is changing the world and he's doing it now. So thank you, Felix. And please, everyone, do have a look at Plant for the Planet online and see if you can support €1, 1 tree. We can all do that, can't we? Welcome back. We are now moving to phase 2 in our 1-hour marathon on this topic of One Health. And I have the most fantastic panel now to introduce you to. We have 2 ladies who are experts in their field. First of all, we have Dr. Isabelle Dieuzy-Labaye, who is the Senior Advisor on Public-Private Partnerships at the World Organization for Animal Health, has over 20 years of experience in the animal health and life sciences sectors. Welcome to you, Isabelle. And María Neira, who was appointed Director for Environment, Climate and Health at the World Health Organization based in Geneva, Switzerland in September 2005. So you're having a busy time. And of course, you were former Vice Minister of Health and the President of the Spanish Food Safety Agency. So welcome to you, María, as well. It's fantastic to have you here. And weren't you inspired with Felix's talk there? It sets the stage for us, I think. And we need to get going. So what I thought I'd do today is I'm going to try and get a conversation going which ends with some proactive kind of things that we can send out to our audience here as what they can do. But what I'd like you to do, please, if you wouldn't mind, just give me a quick intro of why you're here and what you would like to kind of think about in this panel. And Isabelle, would you start, please?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. One Health is obviously, as you mentioned, the topic of the moment, and I think the reason why we are very happy to be here with the OIE, the World Organization for Animal Health, is that it's no news that animals and humans and plants and the environment are very much interconnected, but there has never been as much enthusiasm to work together. And I'm glad to see my colleague from WHO here. I'm sure she will comment in the same direction, that there is a lot being done right now to get the organizations, the WHO, FAO, IE, UNEP together to give direction. It's great what Felix said of stop talking and start planting. I'm very much a pragmatic person. We should act. But I think at the global level, it's important to coordinate and give direction. And again, being here, talking around the One Health subject is an opportunity to say that, yes, there is a lot happening now in terms of connecting our organizations at global level together. And everyone should be very optimistic that this will lead into results, because the work we do is opening doors, and that's how I like to see it. Opening doors at all levels. We'll talk more about it to do better One Health together.
Brilliant, Isabelle. Thank you. And Maria, would you like to just make a couple of opening remarks, please?
Yeah, thank you. And so pleased to be with you and Isabelle, but so excited and on a positive mood now after the refreshing message from Felix. It gives me a lot of hope. I think all of us, we are working every day on this concept of moving environment and health and human and animal health. But hearing people like that, young people with so clear ideas, so positive, so engaged, and with clearly positive steps, it reinforces our message. As Isabelle was saying, that there is a critical moment now for One Health. And I hope that this is going to work and give us a lot of enthusiasm for proposing very concrete actions and then changing now. I will be representing this environmental health that until now has been maybe not sufficiently incorporated, and therefore now is the moment to bring all of these nature-based solutions, all the environment connections and between health, and therefore how we need to associate ourselves as well with big initiatives like the COP26 this year, where this is about health as well. So we need to make sure that the COP26 will be an opportunity to bring all the health benefits from the environmental negotiations, and for people to realize this strong connection, this triangle of human, animal, and environmental health. So very happy to join you, and super positive about Felix and other people who gave me a lot of hope for the day. So yeah.
Fantastic, Maria. And you know, it's I think testament to ChangeNOW for putting this discussion together. And I guess a question for you: pre-COVID, did you guys work a lot together, or has COVID kind of catalyzed this kind of collaboration? And indeed, was One Health a thing before COVID? Isabelle, do you want to comment on that?
I see Maria nodding as well, and you know, I can't help nodding with enthusiasm, because yes, there was a lot happening already on One Health. One Health is no news. I mean, it's a concept that has been around for many years. It's obvious that we are connecting, living on the same planet. And, you know, we work a lot at the OIE, among other things, on diseases that are called zoonoses. Now, that term was not so familiar to many until recently, but it's basically diseases that can walk or be transmitted between animals and humans in both directions. And this is a typical example of One Health, and we've been working with WHO and FAO and others to combat these diseases and to do the famous prevent, detect, and respond as quickly as possible. So One Health is no news. We know we are connected. I think we can do more, and there have been very fast initiatives being done recently, and I'll just give you one example, which again, I mean, María is fully part of, because there is a One Health high-level expert panel which has been convened in recent months. In fact, the whole process started a few months ago at the Paris Peace Forum, was announced at the Paris Peace Forum, and has now been convening, I think, last week. So you can imagine that putting together this expert panel from people from all over the world on the topic of One Health, you know, bringing, you know, building terms of reference together with the other organizations, and selecting among many, I think 800 plus candidates, and then having these experts convene now and giving top level scientific advice on what to do with One Health faster. This is an example of how quickly things are moving. But again, I mean, we've been working on One Health topics for a long time, and especially with the tripartite, which is the FAO, WHO, OIE, plus now UNEP associated to our work. So no news, but certainly a lot of enthusiasm and ambition to do more quicker and build back better.
Yeah.
María, would you like to, I mean, from your perspective, how does that chime, and the urgency of all of this? Because, you know, there are, we need to move fast, as we all know. So, but how are you finding that, and what are the blockers for this agenda?
I think I fully agree with what Isabelle says. I mean, this concept of One Health is not new at all. The difference now is, I think, the level of ambition, and particularly the political ambition. I think that the level is now much more higher. The speed will be fundamental as well. I think what the world is going through at the moment will justify a different speed as the one that we have having until now, and that speed and this coordination between the agencies and the mission, more than the coordination among the agencies, is having this common understanding of the importance of the three parts of this. What in our language, maybe those who work in environmental health, as you know, for the last years, this concept of planetary health started to circulate as well, which rejoins very well the issue of One Health. Is just another dimension that brings as well nature-based solutions. So the opportunities are huge, because now it's so fresh. Everybody understood that it's not just dealing with diseases and fighting diseases. You need to understand as well from where those diseases were coming, what were the causes upstream of those diseases. And obviously deforestation, as Felix was presenting, is one of the causes. A very intensive agricultural practice, very aggressive one. It was one of the trade and commercialization and consumption of certain wild animals, the very aggressive urbanization in certain places that will create the perfect conditions for diseases to spread. And of course, more than anything, this absolutely destroying approach that we have with nature, destroying ecosystems and polluting everything we touch. I mean, the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. That is not good for anyone. I mean, it's destroying our health. Of course, it's destroying the health, humans and animals, of course, but it's destroying the economy as well. And I think that if we are strategic on the way we will move now and at the right speed, I think we can change completely the way we deal with health in general, and we focus very much on the prevention, the real prevention, which is the fantastic word that maybe we have not been using enough and at the political level. Prevention is all about, and it will be so smart, because if we could fix the structural failures that we have detected, this will be good for the economy, this will be good for the society, this will be good for the health of the animals and the people, and of course for the planet. So the issue is for people to realize that if we don't do these things right, is our health the one that will be suffering? And maybe this is the motivation for people to now do differently.
Look, it's a thank you so much for, you sum it up extremely well. It strikes me that, One Health is very strategic. Strategically, globally, we need to embed One Health in our ecosystem, in our psyche. And the question is, And I think the question that I wanted to come on to is, how do we do that? Because I mean, I spend my days, we do strategy on sustainability and innovation, and half the CEOs we work with think this is an amazing opportunity, and the other half kind of don't want to get out and do it. Are you working with business to help do this? Is business a lever? And of course, I'm a member of the B Corp movement, which has a lot of this embedded in its kind of ethos. And you look at the political situation globally, and it's very easy to despair in spite of great initiatives like COP26 coming up, and we're delighted in the UK to be hosting that in November. But what is going to help us cut through, and what do you guys need to accelerate this fast enough for Felix's generation? Isabelle, shall I start with you? Sorry.
I was about to start, sorry. There is much to do, but I would like to focus on two things. I think the first thing when we talk about One Health and efforts in this direction is to break the silos. There are silos in between the human health, the veterinary health, the animal health, the plant health, the agronomists, the environmentalists, the anthropologists. They don't necessarily all work together, but they work at the end of the day on the same topic. So breaking the silos is very important. I work, and you mentioned it, I've worked a lot at the OIE on public-private partnerships. That's another kind of silos that I think is very important to break. I have worked myself 20 plus years in the private sector, looking at it from a different perspective now being in the public sector. But I think there are a lot of silos, and the private sector has a lot to contribute. So we need to work together, definitely. So breaking the silos is one thing, and we can work very pragmatically in organizations like ours, WHO, FAO, OIE, by getting the different stakeholders together around the same table. We have convening power, and we should use it, and we have convening power at the global level. So that gives us the opportunity, and we should not miss it, to convince stakeholders, given that there is, as María was saying, strong political will. That's one obstacle, and that's what we can do concretely to make it happen. The second thing, which I think is difficult, is to maintain a constant level of alertness or vigilance or preparedness. Because it's all good to say we should spend more when we are in the midst of the crisis, or we should have spent more. But when we are in, let's say, peacetime, in disease term, i.e., everything seems okay, or rather okay, on a global level, then it's difficult to justify the budgets, the resources, the people, the training, the education that goes around these topics, these One Health topics, which again are difficult because they are collaborative by nature. It's very difficult to maintain these level of resources. So we should be very wise in terms of allocating the right amount of resources to prepare or to prevent, because it's much less costly to prevent than to cure. So again, two obstacles, and we can certainly do lots at OIE, and I'm sure there is the same in other organizations. In fact, we work together on this topic. We work on emergency preparedness and how to give guidelines to our member countries to better prepare and be prepared for potential crises, because there is one now, there will be others, there have been in the past. So we should keep very alert. And one last point, because it's close to my heart, I think there was a lot being mentioned in the introductory talk this morning by Kimball, but also by Felix a little earlier, about educating the young people, bringing them to know about plants and gardens and animals. I believe a lot can be done at early age in schools with children. And we should not spare our efforts collectively to look at this target. We tend to focus on professionals, veterinary professionals for ourselves, but medical, again, scientists. But we also need to work with the general public, and I think children is a very good target for these kind of interesting topics and fascinating topics. Over to you. Merci.
Merci, Isabelle. Okay, María, that's. Do you want to have you got a couple of thoughts just to continue? I guess you agree with a lot of that, but.
Of course, no, I fully agree with that. Let me add a couple of other things. Is the change on culture as well, our behavior somehow, because you know, as a medical doctor, normally the news that you will be looking for in the newspapers were about diseases. Well, for the last years, my life and the people working on environmental health, the news we are looking for are the ones like 2 weeks ago, the G7 decided that they will stop direct funding on coal-fired power stations to poorer nations from now. So this is a health news, believe it or not. And this is very much the private sector. They need to stop this type of subsidies for fossil fuels. And this is part of this One Health, because this is one of the upstream causes. Or the fact that the International Agency on Energy, they said, well, if if we want to stay with the 1.50 degrees, we need to stop all new developments of fossil fuels plants now, this year. Again, this is something that is about the prevention upstream that we need to look for it. And in this sense, the medical community, the health professionals community is now realizing that their role is not just at the hospitals treating diseases. We need to get out and influence the decisions around energy sources. Unless we move very quickly and we have a quick and healthy energy transition to renewable sources of energy, our health will be very much at risk, and the health of the planet, of course. If we don't have a healthy transition to a food system, a different food system from the production, consumption, and waste management, still we are not solving the problem of the One Health, the interconnection. We need to ensure this energy urban transition, healthy urban transition. So there are several transitions that needs to be done. We need to stop the use of fossil fuels, and we need to influence now the COP26, bringing the health argument. That's why we are preparing a very, I think, a strong report that we will present at the COP26 called The Health Argument for More Climate Action. If COP26 is a strong one, it can be the best public health treaty ever. It's not just an environmental treaty, it will be a public health treaty. So we need to push for that, and in that sense, Isabelle is right. The young generation and medical and professionals, health professionals, we need to insist on that, influence that policies, make sure that our mayors understand that the air pollution levels are killing us and they need to do something about that. So all of those environmental risk factors needs to be incorporated, and we can work upstream with the COP26 and other processes that are now extremely important and will bring enormous health benefits as well, tackling the causes and generating these funds that the health sector normally doesn't have. The health community, medical students and others are now very much mobilized on reducing our own carbon footprint. You know that the health systems are contributing obviously to the carbon footprint, not all of them, because in the Southern Africa region, they not only they don't contribute, they are suffering and they don't have electricity there. So we need to look at all of these issues on a very global strategic way, recognizing there are only benefits for health, for the economy and for the society. So now on the COVID-19 recovery, with a lot of financial support by many governments to this recovery, we need to make sure that the investments will go in the right direction and not making the same mistakes that were made until now. We cannot keep paying subsidies to fossil fuels, so see the importance of the private sector. We cannot keep with Shell. It was an historic resolution yesterday. The court is now asking Shell to reduce the CO2 emissions. This is a health news. So things are changing. And we need to provoke all of those changes and be behind by this health argument that needs to be on the table. 7 million premature deaths every year caused by exposure to air pollution. This is absolutely unacceptable, and it's too visible. We need to make sure that everybody understands the connections. The moment the citizens, the general population will understand the connection between the environmental and the planet and the ecosystems and your lungs, that day will be, wow, what the French call the déclic, Isabelle. C'est ça? C'est un déclic, c'est ça, non? C'est un Renaissance. Renaissance. Let's call it Renaissance.
So, I mean, what is incredible in there, and of course it's obvious, but is this connection between health and solving the climate crisis and the interconnectedness. But if the population who have, we've all lived through, and we've been the lucky ones. There's still absolutely horrible COVID going on across the world, but we've lived through this terrible, experience with the pandemic, and the connection with climate change needs to be made strongly. And then every individual who's been touched by COVID, and let's face it, we all have been in some way or other, then we'll understand that, kind of the One Health agenda is critical to solving climate crisis, and we are not going fast enough. We need to move quicker, as we keep saying. And thank you for saying that, and thank you also for accentuating the role of business. And I think as someone who advises business a lot of the time, the business sector has a lot to do. There's a lot of people here at ChangeNOW, across all silos, across all businesses, amazing partners and sponsors. Please, and I guess they're here because they want to do something, but we need them to go quickly. Now, look, sadly, we're coming to the end of this, and I think we could talk for 3 days about it. So I'm going to just ask you one final question, if I may. And it's in two parts. One is, are you optimistic or pessimistic? Where are you on that scale? And the second one is, what would you like the people who are attending this session to do when they leave this session or when they get home today? What is the one thing that they can do? So Maria, may I start with you, please, with that final concluding remarks?
Okay, thanks. When you work on public health, you need to be optimistic, otherwise you will be depressed. So I'm pathologically optimistic, and I'm now putting a lot of effort on this COP26, hoping that if the countries are serious, they will be generating incredible plans, and those plans will be benefiting our health. But we need to be behind to make sure that they will not escape on their commitments. What I will want people to do after this, maybe one thing. I mean, there is an acronym that I'm sure that only few people knows, which is the NDCs, not NCDs, which is non-communicable diseases. No, it's NDCs. NDCs means National Determined Contribution, which are the plans that each country needs to take now to Glasgow and say, this is my voluntary contribution to the reduction of the greenhouse gases emissions. Every citizen should be able to have a look at that plan on their country and say, hey, I want you to be more ambitious. I want you to execute what you have committed, because my health will depend on this. So if we could move on from acronyms, which I hate, but if this one goes in the message that please be aware how your country is contributing now to this carbon neutral or decarbonization of this low carbon revolution that we need to initiate. This movement is vital for our health. So I will invite everybody to be very much aware of that if we want this green, healthy, and positive revolution with a good economic result.
Thank you very much. Isabelle.
Well, of course, I am optimistic. I am even sometimes an idealist, so it's even worse. But I agree with Maria. I think we would not be sitting where we are if we were not very optimistic. Organizations like, intergovernmental organization like the one in which Maria is working, WHO, or mine, the World Organization for Animal Health, are moving at the pace of an intergovernmental organization with many members. We have 182 members. So we have to bring change that is accepted and adopted by our members. So this takes probably a little bit more time, although I said that we can move fast and faster. But I am very optimistic because I see every day new resolutions, new standards, new norms adopted that are going in the right direction that Maria is describing and you were describing before. And the benefit is that it doesn't move back. It moves forward, it takes time, but each little step is important. And I think for those who are listening to us, these little steps at global level, which are adopted by member countries, and it's basically all the countries in the world, almost, should be seen as door openers for start-uppers, private companies, civil societies, local communities, to open the door of their partners or their potential partners. And with the support of what WHO or FAO or OIE or others, many others in the wildlife sector and many others are doing, open the door and start partnering. And I would like to just leave with this idea about partnership, because I see from where I stand a lot of initiative, especially on the topic of One Health nowadays. It's going in a lot of directions. Everybody has good intents, but my biggest worry sometimes, and that's why I'm not completely optimistic yet, is that we don't get well coordinated to go in the same direction, complement each other, work on the synergies, not repeat things that others are doing, and make the best use of the resources we have. And that's why, you know, it's super important that we coordinate. I was yesterday in a workshop from a new initiative called PRISODE, which is a research initiative driven by French institutes like INRAE and CIRAD and IRD. But it's also brought to 50 countries, 1,000 researchers, sorry. And so it's becoming larger and larger, and it's about preventing zoonotic disease emergence. And, you know, my vision, or, you know, I was sharing part of my vision yesterday, that this kind of initiative should provide a global framework for people to understand, even at a very small scale level, at their community level or local level, how they are part of a bigger initiative and how they contribute and how they synergize with the other and not repeat what others are doing. And cross-pollination also would be a great thing to think. So I'll stop there, but partnership, education to me are the call for action for today. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Isabelle and Maria. An amazing talk. I'm optimistic having listened to you. I'm going to move on now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Merci.
Thank you. Bye.
Welcome back, and what a great conversation that was. We now have our second panel with an extraordinary makeup for this next discussion. We have the businessman, environmentalist and philanthropist, André Hoffmann, who is also vice chairman of pharmaceutical company Roche Holding. And that is the top bit of his bio, which reads for a couple of pages. Welcome, André. We also have the wonderful Professor Fred Thomas, who is an author, editor and Directeur de Recherche at the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique, and also has a much longer biography than just that. And last but not least, Marion Vittecoq, research scientist, manager at the Tour du Valat, which is a research institute for the conservation of Mediterranean wetlands. Welcome to you guys. Thank you very much for joining. It's I don't know if you've been listening to the last couple of panels, but they've set us up nicely, I think, for a slightly broader conversation where we will be able to explore a little bit the interface between business and science, and also some of the ideas that we've talked about yesterday, particularly with Fred. So would you mind introducing yourselves very quickly, each of you, and just give a sense of what you might like to discuss in this panel? And Marion, can I start with you, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here. I am a researcher at the Tour du Valat, as you said, and I've been working for more than a decade now on zoonosis. So it's pathogens circulating between wildlife, domestic animals and humans. So as Maria and Isabelle said before, we've been working on One Health approach since a long time now. But we know that we have to do more now to be able to talk to each other, and they told about the organization level. And I think we also have to put it into action at an individual level. So as professionals, we have to work together between sectors, between veterinarians, between ecologists and medical doctors. And we also have to make more links between public and private sector. And I am also concerned by the One Health approach as a citizen, because we are not just experiencing the One Health approach when we experience the emergence of new pathogens like COVID, but each day, on a daily basis, we are experiencing that our health is connected to ecosystem health, because we are in a leading air. We are our alimentation is based on ecosystems. Our microbiome is depending on ecosystems. So one of my message would be that our health is totally depending on ecosystem health and biodiversity health.
Thank you, Marion. Fred, would you go next, please?
Yeah, so I am Director of Research at the CNRS, the National Center of Scientific Research, based in the south of France. And I work on the application of ecological and evolutionary sciences to health problems, especially infectious diseases and cancers. And as you can imagine, the One Health approach is thus central in my research.
Thank you. We'll come back to some of that research in a second. And André.
Well, thank you very much to invite me today. I think it's a very exciting moment to discuss the One Health approach. As you mentioned in your introduction, I'm the vice chair of Hoffmann Roche, our family company, now in the 4th generation ownership, and we're trying to do something about general health, about health in principle. But it has to be said that the industry, the pharmaceutical industry in particular, is more focused on disease than on health. If we really want to understand how we can protect health, how we can make sure that disease is no longer just a consequence of non-health, but how we can maintain an active and proactive health systems, we need to really understand the behavior of humanity in the different ecosystems. I think it's very important that we better understand the cause and consequences of our behavior towards the ecosystems. And I'm particularly pleased that we have today the opportunity to talk about natural system and not only about the health system. If one of the great problems of health discovery and perhaps even of health science is this notion that we separate the different silos. It became even more apparent than we already knew it during the pandemic, that our system of maintaining people out of disease is not the same thing as maintaining health. And so One Health is an approach which looks at not only humanity, but also looks at veterinarian sciences, at ecosystems health, and the three of them together will constitute the way we can sort of build a long-term future. If I want to translate that into the way we run companies, and I think that's an important subject that was discussed at the ChangeNOW Summit as well, we need to make sure that we construct the success of our company based on a reasonable use of natural, social, and human capital. And I think these three dimensions should allow us to enable the establishment of produced capital, which is today the only one we measure. And I think that's a mistake. But looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
No, André, thank you so much. And you know, you're a very enlightened businessman. You've had a lot of experience in environmental areas. So how, you know, do you see that? Are you positive about the role of business? Because there's, you know, the other side of business is people, you know, wanting to just make money for their shareholders, and they don't really worry about anything else. And particularly when you're making money out of curing diseases rather than preventing them. How is Roche, and what in your work? You know, how does it look compared with other businesses? Do you see there's a movement now towards this and towards businesses engaging? And then how do you best engage?
Well, James, thank you very much for the question, because I think that's an absolutely crucial element of what we're trying to convey, not only at the ChangeNOW Summit, but also with all the activities we have in intent. If we really want to construct long-term success and our business is a family business, we need to make sure that we evaluate not only the financial returns of what we do, but also the impact on the free capitals I mentioned before. We need to manage for impact and not just for immediate financial return. The definition that the success of a company is the maximization of short-term profit is a definition that is a little bit aged now. We've had it for too long. In fact, 1970s, the Milton Friedman essay, The Business of Business is Business. But what we need to do today is to sort of concentrate onto the much longer term, and we can only do that if we measure impact in a sensible manner. And I just wanted to say that the people you've just mentioned who are focusing on profit are not doing that because they're intent on destroying the planet. They're intent on being seen as successful. And our collective definition of success is making money. I mean, this is the way our world is constructed. You are good if you have a high salary. You are good if you increase the share price of your company. Well, that's short term. That's going into the wall. We need to change that, and that's why I think it's so good to be on a panel like this with these two outstanding scientists who can tell us a bit more about the impact our activities geared in the wrong direction is having on ecosystems.
Look, I mean, André, thank you for saying that, and I couldn't agree more. And as a B Corp, we share those values, and let's hope that business is shifting in the right direction. But as you say, let's turn to these amazing scientists. And Fred, you and I had a conversation yesterday, which I was completely fascinated by. Could you give a little bit of color about the support you get and the kind of the nature of that support and what you're doing with it?
Okay, so indeed, what we're doing at the moment, it's because of the support of André, and thanks, André, for that. And I think that it's time to explore novel directions at the moment, because most of the work that has been done in the context of the One Health approach has considered zoonotic diseases, which is normal and logic given their importance that is undoubtedly high. But I also think, and it's what we're exploring at the moment with the support of André, that more attention should be devoted at exploring other diseases and especially cancers. So there are, of course, a lot of papers at the moment linking anthropogenic pollution and cancer, but there is no real work at the moment linking correctly the three components of the One Health approach around cancer, that is to say animal health, human health and ecosystem health. And I think that there are interesting directions to explore. Indeed, as we recently published in a big synthesis in Nature, Ecology and Evolution, there is a large diversity of ways in which humans are unfortunately an oncogenic species for wildlife species, exacerbating the dynamic of oncogenic processes for animals, especially through pollution, but not only. And in the same time, it is also known that cancer progression, even sometimes during the early stages, often comes with an immunosuppression that is more or less severe, and this could in return boost pathogen communities in ecosystem, including on reservoir species. So the first victims of these processes will be wildlife species themselves and the biodiversity. But a part of these pathogens will come back again on humans and in a second step, and this will be detrimental for health. So the mathematical models we are doing at the moment suggest that these dynamics are not so easy to predict. So a lot of work in this interesting direction. Another direction that is of interest concerning the topic One Health and cancer is the existence and the evolution of transmissible cancers. So I'm not talking about cancer that have an infectious causation, like for instance the cervix cancer that are often due to papillomaviruses. Here I'm talking about cancer that are directly contagious, that is to say that the infectious agent is the malignant cell itself. So there are a few impressive examples at the moment, with, for instance, the Tasmanian devils, you probably know, almost eradicated because of two transmissible cancers that appeared relatively recently, 26 and 6 years ago. And more recently has been discovered the case of leukemia in bivalve. And in that case, the cancer is able to cross the barrier of species and to infect several species. So for scientists interested with the One Health approach around cancer, a challenge is, of course, to understand what is the perfect storm between a host and a cancer that can explain why and how a disease that normally is not contagious can suddenly become transmissible, which is in fact a case of inter-individual metastasis. But once the process is started, it's equivalent to a novel form of life that has been created by the cancer process, a parasitic form of life that has its own evolution after, and that can have terrible effect on host populations, as illustrated on Tasmanian devils. So our recent estimation published in BioSL recently suggests that at the moment we underestimate the number of transmissible cancer. And we are also exploring at the moment the possibility that humans favor the dispersal of these transmissible cancers, especially the leukemia, with the marine trade, giving to previously isolated outbreaks pandemic potentials. And a last direction, you want me to continue here? Last direction? Yeah, that is very promising. I will be short. Is the comparative oncology, that is to say, exploring cancer not only in humans and domestic animals, but in all multicellular species, because it is a disease that appeared more than 500 million years ago and concerns all metazoans. And such a holistic approach could shed light on the solutions retained by natural selection to reduce cancer. And this could be at the origin of novel therapeutic strategies, and from an ecological perspective, exploring that among species that live in naturally polluted areas since thousands of years could help to predict a kind of projection. What could be the future if we continue to disturb ecosystem and to exacerbate oncogenic processes? So, in fact, there is no one view on cancer. If you put cancer within the One Health perspective, the traditional separation between communicable and non-communicable diseases has little sense. Yeah.
Thank you, Fred. I mean, I love your passion and energy, and and I know that you said to me that you're encouraged to take risk, which I think is fantastic, because this is such important work. Now, Marion, would you tell us a little bit about your work and how that, kind of how that's impacting this agenda? Could you tell us a bit about the Mediterranean wetlands as well? Was in your bio. I was fascinated by. And we haven't got much time.
Yeah, I will use the antimicrobial resistance. I'm working on to illustrate all of this. So I'm working more on Mediterranean wetlands because they are both biodiversity hotspots and very impacted by human activities. And so it's a real good model to study, to show how, like Fred just said, we are impacting both biodiversity and the dynamics of our pathogen and of our health in general. So I've been working notably on antimicrobial resistance in wildlife in these ecosystems. And I think it's a really good illustration of how complex can be the interaction between our activities and our health, because it is a simple illustration of pathogens that can be transferred from wildlife to humans, to domestic animals, or in the way back, because some bacteria are circulating between these three compartments, but it's much more complex than that, and we have to take into account the evolutionary processes that are occurring. For example, we know that there is a very large reservoir of antimicrobial resistant genes within the soil, within the water, because the fungi and the bacteria that are producing antibiotics have evolved resistance to those antibiotics, and the organisms that live in the vicinity of these organisms have also evolved this resistance. So we know that for each antibiotic we will develop, each new antibiotic, there is already the potential for resistance in ecosystems. So it's the first illustration. And the second illustration is about pollution. When you have some antibiotic residues in the water, for example, they can select for antimicrobial resistance in the bacteria, but other pollutants like heavy metals can also select for resistance, because the same mechanisms can allow a bacteria to be tolerant to heavy metals and to resist some antibiotics, meaning that we cannot just follow, for example, the antibiotic residues to make sure that they not select for resistance, but we have to have a broad view of how we impact the ecosystems and how it will impact our health in return. So I think antimicrobial resistance is a very good illustration of that, because we may have forgotten that during the crisis, but it's a major health threat at the international level, and it illustrates both the simple way pathogens are circulating without frontiers between wildlife, ecosystems, domestic animals and humans, but also the evolutionary processes we have to take into account to understand the huge complexity of the interaction between our impacts and our health.
Marion, thank you very much. And you perfectly illustrate the importance of the interconnectedness of these ecosystems, and how important going forward it is to explore and understand and have the science and have the support for the science. So we have 5 more minutes, and I'm going to just just ask you actually to think maybe about what you would like this audience who are listening to us at the end of this opening panel for ChangeNOW. What would you like them to do when they go home? What can they do to push this agenda? And I'm going to ask André, please, to start with, what would you like people to do to change now?
So I think there's one important lesson we have learned from the entire pandemic. The system as we have built it is focused on short term and is not efficient in the long term, and it's therefore not resilient to exogenous factors like a small virus, which is not even a form of life, just a little thing, which has sort of thrown us completely off balance. So what I would like people to do is to start to take a big fat dose of humility. We know very little. And the collaboration with the people we just have on this panel, among others, as examples of science, shows to you the incredible complexity and interconnectedness of all the things we are trying to do. It's time to sort of ditch the model of domination and move towards collaboration. If we understand the world around us, if we use the right type of science for writing the policies that guide us collectively, if we change our the norms at which we work as humanity, we have a chance to benefit from this incredible richness around us. I mean, biodiversity is not a threat, it's a richness, it's an opportunity, it's an incredible way for humanity to go one step further. So if once you go home, once you switch off your screen rather than going home because you're already home, what you need to be able to start to think is look at this as a new stretch of humanity's development. We have tried domination, it hasn't worked. All the big empires that we've constructed through violence over the years have all been destroyed. We're getting into a place where we need to compose with different factors. We need to make sure that we take with humility the inputs that we are getting from our surroundings and that we work collectively for something more positive. I know it's a big ask. I know it's not easy to swallow what we've learned over the past 60 years in my case to bring to a new level. But I think it's indispensable because there is urgency. Talk to anybody under 20 and they've understood that. They know there is no future if we do not change significantly the way we interact with each other. So it's much broader than just the One Health approach. It's also the one thinking approach, the collective thinking. Okay, small little ask for the afternoon.
That's fantastic. I'm going to ask you to be quick, Fred. A quick something to tell everyone to do, and then
so as a take-home message, I would like people to be aware that, unfortunately, we are an oncogenic species for wildlife species, and this is likely to indirectly exacerbate infectious diseases in ecosystem, and a part of them will come back on us. So we must be aware of this novel risk, and we should amplify researches on this topic. And the groundbreaking nature of these novel research directions rely on our ability to address mechanistic questions with innovative methodologies and to replace them in an ecological and an evolutionary context to ultimately improve health of humans, health of animals, and health of ecosystems.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Marion.
Yes, in line with what André just said, I think one of the key actions we can have is to collaborate more. And so as professional, I would say we can ask, what can I do today to learn more from other sectors, to break the silo myself, to learn from sector I don't know, and to make them know me, and to be able to work together more and more on a daily basis. And as a citizen, I would say that we have to be aware that our health is totally depending on climate change, yes, but also ecosystem health in general and biodiversity health. And we have to urge our politicians to make decisions and actions to take into account this very complex link between our health and ecosystems.
Thank you so much. And I think, I'm not sure whether it'll just cut off when we hit time, but we have hit time. Look, just to conclude, you guys really are amazing in what you're doing. And it's so refreshing to see André supporting and then see this brilliant work that you guys are doing. And I feel optimistic having listened to you guys. I know there's a lot to do. I really want business to move fast. We have to push business. We have to get the business leaders to think, strategically, private businesses and family businesses are much better placed to do that. The investment community is often the tyranny in all of this, but the science is there, and we have the opportunity to solve this. And One Health, I think, is now firmly on the agenda. Thank you so much for joining ChangeNOW, and look forward to seeing you again. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.